In the middle of run-up to the first democratic South African election, when political violence was at the peak, Nelson Mandela chose to fly to Natal on a small propeller plane to give a speech to his Zulu supporters. He probably should not have gone at all. At the time, many of his Zulu supporters were being murdered by the rival Zulu Inkatha Freedom Party, and the situation was far from safe, but he was resolute. I had agreed to meet his flight at the airport. When the plane was 20 minutes from landing, an airport official came over to me to say that one of the engines in the tiny plane had given out, and that they were planning on having fire engines and ambulances on the tarmac in case anything went wrong. The official said that in such cases the pilot was usually able to land the plane without incident. Mandela was on the plane with a lone bodyguard, Mike was his name, and 2 pilots. 20 minutes later, surrounded by fire engines and ambulances, the plane made a slightly rocky landing. A smiling Nelson Mandela entered the small lounge, where he was besieged by a busload of Japanese tourists. True to form, Mandela was intent on shaking hands with each of them and posed with a great big smile for whoever wanted a picture. While Mandela posed, I huddled with Mike, who told me that 2/3 of the way through the trip, Mandela had leaned over to him, pointed out the window, and calmly said that the propeller did not seem to be working. He asked Mike to inform the pilots. Mike went to the cabin. The pilots knew full well about it and told him that they had called the airport and emergency landing procedure had been started. Most likely everything would be okay, they said. Mike told this to Mandela, who slightly nodded and went back to reading his newspaper. Mike, who was not an experienced flyer, said he himself was trembling with fear and that the only thing that calmed him was staring at Mandela, who continued to read the newspaper as though he was a suburban commuter on the morning train headed into the office. Mike said, Mandela barely looked up from the newspaper when the plane was making its landing. When Mandela finished shaking hands, we were hustled into the back seat of the bulletproof BMW that would take us to the rally. I asked him how the flight was, and he leaned over, opened his eyes very wide, and in a dramatic voice said, Man, I was terrified up there. The lesson that I want you to learn from Nelson Mandela is that courage is not the absence of fear, it is learning to overcome it. Pretend to be brave, and you not only become brave, you are brave.